You walk into a Tibetan temple for the first time in this life and tears start flowing without explanation. You hear chanting in a language you've never studied, and something deep inside you recognizes it. You meet a Buddhist teacher and feel an inexplicable sense of homecoming, as if you're remembering rather than learning. These experiences happen to people around the world, practitioners and non-practitioners alike, and according to Tibetan Buddhist masters, they're not random emotional reactions. They're the ripening of karmic seeds planted in previous lifetimes, the fruit of practice you engaged in before you were born into this body. If you've ever wondered why Buddhism feels so familiar despite being new to you, if you want to understand what spiritual propensities carried across lifetimes actually look like, then subscribe now and activate notifications, because today we're exploring the 3 unmistakable signs that you've walked the Buddhist path before, signs that reveal a connection deeper than this single lifetime. The Tibetan Buddhist understanding of rebirth and karma provides the philosophical foundation for recognizing past life connections to the Dharma. This isn't the popular Western notion of reincarnation, where a soul transmigrates from one body to another carrying memories and personality intact. The Buddhist teaching is far more subtle and sophisticated. What continues from one life to the next is not a permanent self or soul, which Buddhism explicitly denies exists, but rather a stream of consciousness shaped by karmic propensities, by habitual patterns of thought and action, by tendencies cultivated through repeated practice. When you spend a lifetime training your mind in compassion, that training doesn't disappear at death. It creates momentum that carries forward into the next rebirth. When you study emptiness deeply, that understanding leaves traces that make it easier to reconnect with those insights in future lives. The Dalai Lama himself is recognized as the 14th incarnation in a lineage of tulkus, realized beings who consciously choose rebirth to continue benefiting sentient beings. The entire tulku system in Tibetan Buddhism rests on the principle that spiritual practice creates continuity across lifetimes. The first sign that you've practiced Buddhism in past lives is what Tibetan masters call instant recognition, or immediate affinity with the teachings. This manifests in specific ways that go beyond casual interest or intellectual curiosity. When you first encounter Buddhist philosophy, particularly teachings on emptiness, impermanence, or the nature of mind, something clicks at a level deeper than conceptual understanding. It's not that you're learning new information, it's that you're remembering what you already know. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, one of the most revered Tibetan masters of the 20th century, described this phenomenon in students he taught. Some people required extensive explanation and years of study to grasp fundamental concepts. Others heard a teaching once and immediately understood not just intellectually, but experientially. The difference, he explained, wasn't intelligence or education. It was the presence or absence of familiarity from previous training. When you've contemplated the 4 noble truths in past lives, when you've meditated on compassion across multiple rebirths, encountering those teachings again triggers recognition. The neural pathways, or their subtle karmic equivalents, are already established. You're not building from scratch. You're reactivating dormant capacity. This recognition often comes with emotional intensity that surprises people. You read a text by Shantideva or Nagarjuna and find yourself crying without knowing why. You hear teachings on the nature of suffering and feel profound relief, as if someone finally articulated what you've always sensed but couldn't express. You encounter instructions on meditation and immediately know how to do it, not because you've practiced in this life, but because the body-mind remembers patterns cultivated previously. Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche shares stories of Western students who came to their first meditation retreat and within hours were sitting in deep states of absorption that typically require years to develop. When questioned, they had no explanation. They'd never meditated before in this lifetime. But the facility, the ease, the natural capacity suggested extensive prior training. This isn't about believing you were some great master in a past life, which is usually ego fantasy. It's recognizing that genuine practice leaves traces, creates momentum, establishes propensities that manifest when conditions align. If you're experiencing this kind of instant recognition with Buddhist teachings, leave a comment describing your experience. These stories validate and encourage others on the path. The quality of this recognition differs from mere intellectual interest in important ways. Plenty of people find Buddhism philosophically interesting, appreciate its psychological insights, respect its ethical framework. That's wonderful, but it's not the same as karmic affinity. The sign of past life practice is that the teachings don't just interest you, they call to you with urgency. You feel that practicing Buddhism isn't optional or recreational. It's essential, like breathing. You're willing to make significant life changes to accommodate practice. You're willing to face discomfort, challenge your assumptions, restructure your priorities. This isn't coming from ego's desire to be special or spiritual. It's coming from a deeper place, from what Tibetan Buddhism calls the alaya, or storehouse consciousness, where karmic seeds ripen. The seed of Dharma practice planted in previous lives is now sprouting, and it has its own force, its own direction, its own insistence on growing. The teachings on karma and merit help explain this mechanism. In Buddhist philosophy, every action of body, speech, and mind creates karmic results. Virtuous actions create merit, positive karmic momentum. Non-virtuous actions create obstacles and suffering. But there's a specific category of merit that comes from Dharma practice, from studying teachings, from meditation, from serving teachers and practitioners, from supporting the preservation and transmission of Buddhism. This Dharma merit is considered particularly potent because it leads directly toward liberation rather than just toward fortunate rebirth in worldly terms. When you accumulate substantial Dharma merit in one lifetime through dedicated practice, that merit doesn't evaporate at death. It creates the causes and conditions for reconnecting with the Dharma in future lives. You might be reborn in a place where Buddhism exists. You might encounter teachers who can guide you. You might have the intelligence and opportunity to practice. Most importantly, you might have the inclination, the natural pull toward spiritual development that many people simply don't feel. Thupten Jinpa, in his work Bridging Traditional Tibetan Scholarship and Contemporary Understanding, points out that the concept of spiritual propensities carried across lifetimes isn't unique to Buddhism. Many contemplative traditions recognize that some individuals seem naturally drawn to spiritual practice, while others have no interest despite similar circumstances and opportunities. The Buddhist explanation is that those with strong Dharma inclination have cultivated it previously. They've done the work before. What appears as natural talent or innate capacity is actually the fruit of past effort. This understanding has practical implications. It means that if you feel strongly called to Buddhist practice in this life, you have an unusual opportunity. The conditions have aligned, the merit has ripened, the door is open. Wasting this opportunity through distraction or procrastination is what Tibetan teachers call one of the great tragedies, throwing away something precious that was difficult to obtain. The second sign of past life Buddhist practice is encountering your teacher with a sense of immediate, inexplicable recognition and devotion. This is one of the most powerful and commonly reported experiences among serious practitioners. You meet a lama, a rinpoche, a Dharma teacher, and something shifts fundamentally. The relationship doesn't feel like student meeting instructor. It feels like reunion. There's a quality of remembering, of coming home, of finding someone you've been searching for without knowing you were searching. Traditional Tibetan Buddhism places enormous emphasis on the guru-student relationship, describing it as the root of all spiritual accomplishment. The teacher is not just someone who provides information. The teacher embodies the lineage, transmits blessings, points directly at the nature of mind, guides you through obstacles, holds you accountable. This kind of profound relationship doesn't develop overnight based solely on current life interaction. It has depth that comes from connection across multiple lifetimes. The stories of how great masters found their teachers often include elements of past life recognition. The current Dalai Lama was identified as a young child through a complex process that included visions, signs, and tests, but also the immediate recognition when he saw possessions of the previous Dalai Lama and claimed them as his own. This wasn't learned behavior. This was recognition emerging from continuity of consciousness. Similarly, many tulkus as children spontaneously recognize students, attendants, or objects from their previous lives. These dramatic cases make headlines, but subtler forms of recognition happen constantly. A Western student meets a Tibetan teacher for the first time and knows with absolute certainty that this is their guru, that they're meant to study with this person, that this relationship is central to their spiritual path. Sometimes this knowing comes with specific memories or imagery. More often, it's just a felt sense of rightness, of pieces falling into place. Click the like button if you've experienced this kind of recognition with a teacher. Your engagement helps these teachings reach those who need them. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who brought Tibetan Buddhism to the West in ways that profoundly influenced contemporary practice, spoke about the role of past life connections in the teacher-student relationship. He explained that when a student feels instant devotion to a teacher, unshakable faith that isn't based on the teacher's reputation or impressive qualities, but emerges spontaneously from within, this indicates karmic connection. The student and teacher have practiced together before. They have history in the Dharma. The teacher may have been the student's master in a previous life, or they may have been Dharma siblings training together, or the student may have made aspirations in dying moments of a previous life to reconnect with this lineage. Whatever the specific history, the connection is real and serves as powerful support for practice in the current lifetime. This isn't superstition or wishful thinking. It's recognition of how relationship and practice intersect across the continuum of lives. The depth of devotion that arises from past life connection differs from the superficial guru worship that sometimes afflicts spiritual communities. Authentic devotion based on karmic recognition includes critical intelligence. You're devoted to the teacher, but you also test them, examine their conduct, verify that their actions align with Dharma principles. You're devoted to what the teacher represents, the lineage they embody, the transmission they carry, not to their personality or the desire to be special in their eyes. This kind of mature devotion becomes the foundation for genuine guru yoga practice, where you unite your mind with the teacher's enlightened mind. In Vajrayana Buddhism, guru yoga is considered the most essential practice, more important than any particular deity meditation or philosophical study, because the teacher is the living embodiment of the path. Without the blessing and guidance that flows through that relationship, progress is slow or impossible. With it, realization can unfold rapidly. The contemporary challenge with this teaching is that Westerners often lack cultural context for devotion-based practice. We're skeptical of authority, uncomfortable with hierarchy, alert to the dangers of spiritual abuse that have plagued many traditions, including Buddhism. These concerns are valid and necessary, but they shouldn't prevent us from recognizing when genuine guru-disciple relationship based on past life connection is present. The signs are distinct. The relationship increases your wisdom and compassion. It challenges your ego rather than inflating it. It empowers you to practice rather than creating dependency. The teacher's presence clarifies rather than confuses. Over time, you become more yourself, more capable, more free, not more entangled. These are the marks of authentic connection versus the red flags of problematic dynamics. The third sign that you've practiced Buddhism in past lives is facility with advanced practices that typically require extensive preparation. This manifests in multiple ways across different aspects of the path. Some people sit down to meditate for the first time and can remain in stable concentration for extended periods without the restlessness and mental wandering that plague beginners. Some people receive pointing out instruction in Dzogchen or Mahamudra and immediately recognize Rigpa, the nature of mind, a recognition that's supposed to be rare and difficult. Some people take to deity yoga visualization practices with ease, able to generate clear images and maintain complex liturgies that others struggle with for years. Some people naturally embody ethical conduct without effort or internal conflict, as if virtue is their default state rather than something they have to cultivate through discipline. All of these suggest that the groundwork was laid previously, and you're now building on an existing foundation. Longchen Rabjam wrote extensively about the signs of ripening practice from previous lives. One sign he identified is that when you receive teachings, you don't just hear words. You experience direct transformation. The teaching hits your mind and something opens, something shifts, something that was blocked becomes fluid. Another sign is that obstacles that would derail most practitioners only strengthen your practice. illness, relationship difficulties, material loss. These challenging circumstances become opportunities for deepening rather than excuses for abandoning practice. You have resilience that comes from having walked this path before, from knowing at some level that temporary difficulties don't negate the fundamental value of Dharma. A third sign is natural renunciation, not the forced rejection of worldly pleasure, but genuine disillusionment with samsaric pursuits. You tried that in previous lives. You know where it leads. You're not interested in repeating the same patterns. You want liberation. Share this video with anyone who's felt this inexplicable draw to Buddhist practice. Understanding past life propensities can validate and energize their path. The concept of spiritual maturity carried across lifetimes relates directly to what Tibetan Buddhism calls the three scopes of practitioner. The initial scope practitioner is concerned primarily with avoiding lower realms in the next life, seeking fortunate rebirth in better circumstances. The intermediate scope practitioner seeks personal liberation from the cycle of rebirth altogether. The highest scope practitioner, the bodhisattva, seeks enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. Most people who are genuinely drawn to Buddhism in this life, especially those who feel strong pull toward Mahayana or Vajrayana, rather than just meditation as stress relief, are demonstrating highest scope propensities. You care about others' suffering, not just your own. You're willing to engage in practices that might not produce immediate personal benefit, but serve the greater goal of awakening. This altruistic motivation doesn't arise easily. It's cultivated over time, over lifetimes. If you have it now, you've been developing it before. Patrul Rinpoche, in his classic text, Words of My Perfect Teacher, describes how to recognize if you've encountered the Dharma before. One indication is that hearing teachings on emptiness or Buddha nature doesn't frighten you. Many people, when they first encounter the teaching that there is no permanent self, that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, react with existential terror. But some people hear these teachings and feel tremendous relief, like a weight has been lifted. This suggests they've worked with these concepts before and trust them. Another indication is that your interest in Dharma remains stable through ups and downs. You're not just enthusiastic during the honeymoon phase of new discovery. You stay committed when practice becomes routine or difficult. You don't abandon the path when you don't get the results you expected as quickly as you wanted. This consistency suggests deep roots. The relationship between past life practice and present life circumstances deserves careful attention. Having practiced Buddhism before doesn't mean your current life will be easy. Sometimes the opposite is true. You might be born in challenging circumstances, specifically because you have the spiritual resources to work with those challenges productively. You might face particular obstacles because they're precisely what you need to develop qualities you haven't yet perfected. The merit from past practice ensures you encounter the Dharma again, but it doesn't eliminate the karma from non-virtuous actions you've also committed. You might have extensive meditation experience from previous lives, and also have significant obscurations to work through. The path isn't linear. It's not that you completed certain stages before and now you're automatically advanced. It's that you have familiarity, affinity, capacity that makes progress possible in ways it wouldn't be otherwise. His Holiness. The Dalai Lama frequently addresses questions about past lives and karmic continuity. He emphasizes that for most people, specific memories of previous lives are not accessible and shouldn't be the focus. What matters is recognizing the patterns, the propensities, the affinities that indicate continuity, and using them skillfully in current practice. He also warns against the trap of spiritual pride. Believing you were some important practitioner in a past life can feed ego rather than undermining it. The point of recognizing past life practice isn't to feel special. It's to recognize that you have resources, that the path is familiar, that you're not starting from zero. This recognition should inspire diligence and gratitude, not arrogance. You've been given an opportunity that many beings don't have. The appropriate response is to use it well. The practice of Guru Yoga in the Vajrayana tradition works directly with the principle of past life connection. When you visualize your teacher as inseparable from the Buddha, when you receive their blessings, when you unite your mind with theirs, you're not engaging in make-believe or wishful thinking. You're activating the karmic connection established through previous practice together. The teacher serves as catalyst for remembering your own nature. In Dzogchen particularly, the master's role is to point out what's already present but unrecognized. If you have no prior familiarity with the nature of mind, that pointing out might not register. But if you've recognized Rigpa before, the master's gesture can immediately reawaken that recognition. This is why students who've practiced in past lives often have breakthrough experiences in the presence of realized teachers. The external condition, the teacher's presence and skill, meets the internal condition, your own prior development, and realization occurs. What's your experience of these three signs? Do you recognize immediate affinity with teachings, connection with teachers, or facility with practices? Comment honestly about your journey. The scientific perspective on these experiences tends towards psychological or neurological explanations. Perhaps what feels like past life recognition is actually pattern matching based on cultural exposure. Even subtle exposure you don't consciously remember. Perhaps the emotional intensity comes from psychological projection or the fulfillment of unconscious needs. Perhaps facility with meditation reflects natural temperament or brain structure rather than karmic carryover. These explanations aren't necessarily wrong. Buddhism doesn't require rejecting conventional scientific understanding. But they're incomplete. They describe proximate causes without addressing ultimate questions about consciousness, continuity, and what exactly is being reborn, if not a soul. The Buddhist position is that both perspectives can coexist. You can acknowledge neurological correlates of spiritual experience, while also recognizing that consciousness itself is not reducible to brain activity, that the stream of awareness continues beyond this single lifetime. The practical implications of recognizing that you've practiced before are significant. First, it provides motivation. When practice feels difficult and progress seems slow, remembering that you're not starting from scratch helps maintain commitment. You're building on prior work. The investment compounds across lifetimes. Second, it offers explanation for experiences that might otherwise seem bizarre or problematic. If you have spontaneous memories of practices or places you've never encountered in this life, if you feel profound connection to teachers you just met, if you cry during rituals whose meaning you don't conceptually understand, you're not losing your mind. You're accessing continuity that transcends this single incarnation. Third, it clarifies direction. The practices, teachers, and teachings you feel most drawn to might not be random preference. They might be the continuation of work you've already begun. Sogyal Rinpoche, in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, emphasizes that recognizing the continuity of consciousness across lifetimes transforms how you approach both life and death. Life becomes one chapter in a much longer story. What you do now has consequences that extend far beyond this body's lifespan. Death becomes a transition rather than an ending, a shift between states rather than annihilation. This perspective doesn't diminish the preciousness of this life. It amplifies it. You have limited time in this particular form, with these particular opportunities. The teachers available to you now won't be available forever. The body you have now with its capacity for practice won't last. The motivation to practice becomes urgent, not because you're desperately trying to accomplish something before you die, but because you recognize that what you accomplish now carries forward and determines your future trajectory. The idea that certain people are meant for the Dharma, while others aren't, raises uncomfortable questions about spiritual hierarchy and determinism. Tibetan Buddhism addresses this directly. Everyone has Buddha nature, the fundamental potential for awakening. Everyone can practice and benefit from practice. Everyone has accumulated some merit and created some karmic connections with Dharma in the infinite previous lifetimes we've all experienced. But the strength of those connections varies tremendously. Some beings are just beginning their relationship with Buddhism. For them, this lifetime might be about planting seeds that will ripen in future lives. Others are further along, ready for deeper practices, ripe for realization. Neither is better or worse from the ultimate perspective. Everyone is exactly where they are based on causes and conditions, but recognizing where you are helps you practice appropriately for your level, rather than either underestimating or overestimating your capacity. The relationship between faith and past life practice illuminates another dimension. In Tibetan Buddhism, faith or trust in the Dharma is considered essential, one of the mental factors without which spiritual progress is impossible. But faith arises more easily in some people than others. Those who've practiced before have experiential basis for trust. They might not remember specific details, but at some level they know that these teachings work, that these methods lead somewhere valuable, that investing in practice yields results. This isn't blind faith. It's confidence based on prior verification. Those without past life connection to Buddhism might need to develop faith slowly through incremental experience and reasoning. Those with strong karmic affinity often arrive with faith already present, which accelerates their practice considerably. The dangers of misinterpreting these signs deserve attention. Ego is endlessly creative at co-opting spiritual experience for its own purposes. You feel connection with a teacher and decide you must have been their close disciple in a past life, that you're spiritually advanced, that you deserve special treatment. You find meditation easy and conclude you're naturally more evolved than others. You feel called to Buddhism and use that as excuse for spiritual pride or for bypassing practical responsibilities. All of these are perversions of genuine recognition. The real signs of past life practice make you humble, not arrogant. They make you more committed to practice, not more convinced you've already accomplished something. They make you grateful for the opportunity, not entitled to results. Authentic teachers can distinguish between genuine ripening of past merit and ego fantasy. This is one reason why practicing within a legitimate lineage with qualified guidance is so important. Where do you go from here if you recognize these signs in yourself? The path is clear and has been articulated by countless masters. Establish or deepen your connection with an authentic teacher in a legitimate lineage. Engage in the preliminary practices that purify obscurations and accumulate merit, even if you feel you've done them before. Study the philosophical texts that provide framework for understanding reality and the path. Commit to regular meditation practice, starting with foundational shamatha and vipassana, progressing to more advanced methods as appropriate. Serve the Dharma through supporting teachers, texts, and practitioners. Live ethically, minimizing harm and maximizing benefit to others. Contemplate death and impermanence regularly to maintain urgency about practice. Develop bodhicitta, the altruistic intention to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. These are the essentials, and they're the same whether this is your first life practicing Buddhism or your 100th. The ultimate sign of past life practice is not dramatic experiences or special abilities. It's the simple, profound quality of not turning back. Once you've genuinely entered the Buddhist path, once you've tasted the liberating potential of these teachings and methods, you might wander, you might get distracted, you might struggle, but you don't abandon the Dharma entirely. Something in you knows this is the path home. That knowing, that unshakable orientation toward awakening despite obstacles and setbacks, is the fruit of having practiced before. It's the momentum of intention established across lifetimes finally gathering enough force to carry you all the way to liberation. Not in this life necessarily, but eventually, inevitably, because you've set a trajectory that cannot be permanently derailed. The three signs we've explored, immediate recognition of teachings, profound connection with teachers, and facility with advanced practices, are not exhaustive. There are other indications of past life Buddhist practice. Natural compassion that doesn't require cultivation, dreams of Buddhist places, teachers, or practices. Spontaneous memories when visiting Dharma sites. Emotional responses to ritual objects or symbols. Physical sensations during meditation that suggest prior training. The ability to maintain practice through difficult circumstances that would derail most people. All of these point toward continuity, toward a relationship with the Dharma that predates this particular lifetime. But the essential point isn't cataloging signs to convince yourself you're special. It's recognizing that if you feel called to this path, there's reason for that calling. The seed was planted before. Now it's sprouting. Your responsibility is to nurture it, to provide the conditions for growth, to bring to fruition what was begun in previous lives. What will you do with this recognition? How will understanding that your connection to Buddhism extends across lifetimes change your practice? Share your intentions in the comments. Making them public strengthens commitment. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe now because we're exploring the depths of Tibetan Buddhist wisdom in ways that honor both tradition and contemporary relevance. Share this with anyone who's felt inexplicably called to the Dharma, who's wondered why Buddhism feels like coming home. The path is ancient. The lineage is unbroken. Your connection to it extends beyond memory into the depths of consciousness itself. The opportunity is now. The door is open. Will you walk through?